Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. It's the Elysabeth Alfano Show, the only plant-based radio show in the nation. Love to be on WCGO. Now, if you can't get to 1590 AM and 95.9 FM on your dial in Chicago, it doesn't matter because you can always say, hey Alexa, play me WCGO. And of course, you can always listen to WCGOradio.com. Okay, so I am recording today from the gorgeous and beautiful Santa Barbara Four Seasons. It is such a gorgeous property, and I'm thrilled to be here because they really have a vision for vegan food and a way of life. They're really going forward with the environment in mind. So I am thrilled to be here at the Four Seasons Santa Barbara. I'm going to be tasting some delicious food by Chef Leslie Durso later on in the show. And then, of course, the founder of Blue Zones, which is what today's show is all about, Dan Buettner, is going to be joining me just after the news. So quick segment of news before Dan chimes in. I think we all watched the Oscars, and I have to say that word for word, this needs to be repeated. Here's today's news. From the podium of the Oscars last Sunday, it went like this. Joaquin's speech, in referring to film, he said, "It's the greatest gift that it has given me and anyone in this room. It's the opportunity for us to use our voices for the voiceless. I've been thinking a lot about some of the distressing issues that we're all facing collectively, and at times we feel and are made to feel that we champion different causes. But for me, I see commonality. I think that whether we are talking about gender inequality or racism or queer rights or indigenous rights or animal rights, we're talking about the fight against injustice. We're talking about the fight against the belief that one nation, one people, one race, one gender, or one species has the right to dominate, control, and use and exploit another with impunity. I think that we've become very disconnected from the natural world, and many of us, what we are guilty of is an egocentric worldview, the belief that we are the center of the universe. We go into the natural world and we plunder it for its resources. We feel entitled to artificially inseminate a cow, and when she gives birth, we steal her baby, even though her cries of anguish are unmistakable. And then we take her milk that is intended for her calf and we put it in our coffee and our cereal. I think we fear the idea of personal change because we think we need to sacrifice something, to give something up. But as human beings, at our best, we are so inventive, so creative, and ingenious. And I think that when we use love and compassion as our guiding principles, we can create, develop, and implement systems of change that are beneficial to all sentient beings and the environment. I've been a scoundrel in my life. I've been selfish. I've been cruel at times, hard to work with. And I'm grateful that so many of you in this room have given me a second chance. And I think that's when we are at our best, when we support each other, not when we cancel out each other for our mistakes, but when we help each other to grow, when we educate each other, when we guide each other towards redemption. That is the best of humanity. When he was 17, my brother wrote this lyric, "Run to the rescue with love, and peace will follow." Joaquin Phoenix is a beautiful human being. That speech is going to go down in history. That's today's news. But I do have to say that Joaquin Phoenix is not the only beautiful human being. I do have Dan Buettner in the house, in the Santa Barbara Four Seasons house. He is the founder of Blue Zones. Come join me.
All right.
Belly up to the mic, Dan.
Well, I'm honored to be in the same sentence as Joaquin Phoenix.
Who isn't?
That's quite a compliment there.
He's pretty awesome, I do have
really
to say.
Is. Yeah.
And so you were impressed with the speech as well.
I was. I mean, who couldn't be?
Who wasn't? That's right.
Yes. I mean, a voice like that galvanizing sort of the world around this topic. You know, it's arrived, and you are really at the vanguard. I mean,
well,
the first plant-based radio. It's what America needs.
It is what America needs. I couldn't agree more, and I love what we're seeing that Joaquin did so eloquently. But you also touch on it in your book, I think, which is very important. Of course, we're talking about Blue Zones Kitchen, which is the newest book by New York Times best-selling author Dan Buettner and the founder of Blue Zones. Is that it's when you're really vegan, and we're going to talk about the Blue Zones, do not worry, we're getting into all the tenets of the Blue Zones, but just sort of generally and tangentially. When you really care about your diet and veganism and the implications of your diet, what it means for the environment, etc., you're starting to take a worldview. You're starting to take a view that is larger than just you and your health, which is so important, but it's larger than you. And you cover that in your book too, because you're, talking about world communities.
Yeah, well, the idea behind Blue Zones was to find the longest lived people in the world and then reverse engineer what they do. And certainly, these Blue Zones, they not only live long, but they live a good life. And there's a happiness incorporated into it.
When that was your second book, Thrive, Finding Happiness the Blue Zones Way. And of course, the first book, let's see if I've got this right, Blue Zones, Lessons for Living Longer from the People Who've Lived the Longest. And now this is your fourth book, Blue Zones Kitchen. Okay, so we want to get into all the tenets of Blue Zones and living longer, but I kind of want to set it up for people. So before you started looking into reverse aging and became a National Geographic Fellow, you were doing transcontinental bike rides from, let's say, Alaska to Argentina, or around the 45th parallel, setting Guinness World Records. And then you set up a travel company to be able to keep doing these kind of expeditions. What made you turn from that, a relatively young, healthy guy taking on world records, to being fascinated with aging?
Well, the travel company, as you put it, was actually more of an expedition company. I was in the business of solving scientific mysteries, and we came up with a way for classrooms to not only follow along, but actually direct an expedition with National Geographic photographers and filmmakers and archaeologists and biologists. And I did 15 of those expeditions. And every year I had to find two great mysteries that, one, were solvable, and two, people cared about. And in 1999, I stumbled across this archipelago of islands in Southeast Asia that have the longest disability-free life expectancy in the world, which means they live a long time and they die quickly, and they avoid chronic disease. And that was Okinawa. And that we did one of these quick expeditions there, and then I got the idea, if there's a longevity hotspot in Asia, there must be longevity hotspots in Europe and North America and South America. So that launched Blue Zones.
And so you were sort of given the task. It's not that you, as a person who was bike riding across countries, you didn't say, oh, I'm interested in aging. It sort of came to you as, I have to solve a mystery here, and this was the one that the most people care about.
Yes, I think the previous mysteries were, why did the Maya civilization disappear? What happened to the Anasazi? Where are human origins? The roots of Western civilization. So I was always trying to solve some mystery, and we got very good. Working with National Geographic, we can quickly network our way with the top scientists, and we did, for lack of a better term, sort of a meta-analysis at trying to take all the available science and metabolize it and come up with an answer. And Blue Zones is just I would say the best example with the findings, I think, that are most relevant to our lives, at least if you're over 30.
Yes, absolutely. And I would venture to say that as Americans, when I say I'm vegan and people are like, well, why do you care? We're all living longer. And I say, no, we're not living longer. We're dying longer. You are spending more time on pills. So maybe you're making it to 90. Oh, but those last 3 decades are really hard because you're in pain and you're hurting and you've got boatloads of pills, which is expensive.
Well, actually, life expectancy the last 3 years has dropped, and it's the first time in living history. So we're not living longer as a country. Other places are living longer. Yeah, we flattened off, and we're headed towards a country where 50% of us are obese, and that's because of what we eat. We're the capacity of the human machine. So everybody listening out there right now, if you do everything right and you have an average set of genes, you should make it into your mid-90s. And life expectancy here is more like 80. So we're leaving 13 to 14 years of life expectancy on the table that we could be getting, and those would be good years. So when people think about living to 100, a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to live that long. But the reality is, the longer you've lived, the healthier you've been. So going towards 100, I can put that another way too. The cohort of people who die in their 60s suffer about 8 to 9 years of disability called morbidity. The cohort of people who die at 100, they only suffer about 9 months of morbidity. So for several perspectives, you want to shoot for 100.
So that was going to be another question I was going to ask you, because Blue Zones, the Blue Zone kitchens, it's 100 recipes to live to 100. And originally, before talking to Dan, I was like, do I really want to live to 100? Is that your goal, Dan? You want to live to 100?
I wouldn't say it's a goal, but I probably am on a path. So right now, as I said before, the best you can expect given an average set of genes is about 92 or 93 for a male, maybe 95 for a female. But since 1840, life expectancy for humans has gone up 2 years per decade. So given that I'm middle-aged, I should have 4 more decades left. I should get 8 bonus years on top of my 92. So making it to 100, I think, is realistic for me.
This is the goal. You're talking like an athlete. Like you're in the range. You're shooting for it.
Yeah, I guess I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's not keep people waiting. Let's talk about, first of all, the cities because when you started looking into the Blue Zones, there were already 3 established cities, I think, that were living the longest around the world and were sort of established Blue Zones. And you went ahead and found 2 more. Is that right?
Well, actually, when I started, there were no established Blue Zones. There was a paper in a Journal of Experimental Gerontology that referenced an area in Sardinia that these scientists were calling this one area a Blue Zone. Nobody knew about it. But I had the idea of taking the term and applying it. I went into the scientific literature, and I found this place, Okinawa, that had the highest concentration of women over 60 that made it to 100, and then Loma Linda, California, among the Adventists, where people are living about 7 or 8 years longer. And I basically named them as a Blue Zone and wrote a cover story for National Geographic about those 3 places. The idea was to find the common denominators that explain longevity in those 3 places. That book was a big hit. The magazine article was a big hit. So then I hired demographers to go out and look for more Blue Zones. And we found Costa Rica, the Nicoya Peninsula, and then finally the island of Ikaria, Greece. And all those places, people are not only living a long time, but they're staying healthy into their 90s and even hundreds in some cases. And remarkably, in Ikaria, they suffer about 1/10 the rate of dementia that we do here in the United States. So they're not only their bodies are not only healthy, but their minds stay sharp till the end, which is what we want.
Yeah, and this is a huge concern for people. As Dr. Ornish has talked about, perhaps reversing Alzheimer's. This is very new research, not well established yet, with plant-based diet. But there's more and more Alzheimer's, as I understand it, coming to us at an earlier age even, and I know it's a big concern for people. So you're saying that people are living not just physically healthy, but mentally they're staying sharp.
In Blue Zones. Meanwhile, in the United States, in the last 20 years or so, the rate of dementia has almost doubled. So we're, and it's just so clear that heart attacks, cardiovascular disease, many types of cancer, especially cancers of the digestive tract, diabetes, dementia, they all have a root cause in what we're eating. Ultra-processed foods, meaty, sweety, crappy food. As we eat more and more of it, we get sicker and sicker. But we don't want to acknowledge it.
And the frustrating thing here is it is totally within our control. A lot of people say, well, it's genetics, or these things just happen and we don't know how. But actually, we really do, and it's all in our control, and we have the ability to reverse it.
Yes, I mean, theoretically it's in our control, but you go to, for enlightened people like you and the people you have on your guests on your program. But if you're a single mother living in Iowa and you're supposed to go into the community and make the healthy choice for your family, if you haven't been educated, 97 out of 100 choices that you're confronted with are bad.
Yes.
They have convenience stores and Shopko and Burger King and Pizza Hut and Godfather's, and it's almost impossible to find healthy plant-based food, whole, that's not ultra-processed too. So, if this is going to be disruptive, but if you're overweight in this country, it's probably not your fault.
Yes, I know what you're saying, that there is a social injustice component to it, that you have been marketed to such an extreme that there's no way out of it for you if you are in certain parts of the country. Would you say that this is intentional from the government?
No, it is a byproduct of over-innovation. And until 1960, there weren't enough calories to feed every American. And Earl Butz, who was Nixon's Secretary of Agriculture, he's the guy who created this system that favors corn and wheat and soybeans and sugar beets, and the sort of distribution system to make those cheap and ubiquitous. And then it's marketing companies. It's American ingenuity that take those cheap inputs. They turn them into Frosted Flakes or wieners, or well, they feed them to animals and turn them into wieners and hamburgers, and then they spend marketing dollars and they create a huge profit. And it's not a conspiracy, but it's more like that old experiment. If you throw a frog into boiling water, it will leap out. If you throw a frog in lukewarm water and turn up the water 1 degree at a time, it'll just become complacent and die. That's what's happening to us in America. Our food environment is getting more and more toxic every year, and it's very hard to escape.
I'll use another analogy rather than animals. It's sort of like plastic surgery. You start somewhere, and then before you know it, you're way off the charts. It's not the exact same example, but I do know what you mean. Where it's happening to us so slowly, it's almost imperceptible. And then you look back 10 years, and you're like, wow, this is really bad for us.
In 1980, there was a third the rate of obesity that we have right now. There was about a seventh the rate of diabetes. And that's not because people were more enlightened back then, or they had more discipline, or they had better diet plans. It's because the food environment was very different then.
Right, and exercise was different as well. I think people were moving around more.
Perhaps. I think it's mostly food.
Just straight diet. Okay, so let's talk about the diet habits of those in the blue zones countries, those that live the longest. I was surprised to find that there's some alcohol in there. So let's go over the list of stuff.
Rats.
Yeah, well, or good. You never know. And coffee was in there. I was surprised about that one as well. So of course I knew that meat wouldn't be in it and dairy wouldn't be in it. But let's talk about the list.
Yes. So the idea behind the Blue Zone Kitchen was to find an average of what people were eating for the last 100 years in all 5 blue zones. And to do that, we had to find dietary surveys that went back to the 20s.
Oh, wow.
Because if you want to know what a centenarian ate to live to be 100, you have to know what she was eating when she was a little girl and a teenager and newly married and middle-aged and newly retired. So you can't just ask a 100-year-old, what are you eating? Because they don't remember. If I ask you, what did you have for lunch a week ago Tuesday? Can you tell me?
I cannot.
Yeah, most people can't, so you can't ask a centenarian. So 155 dietary surveys. And if you look at the average...
It must be hard to get that information.
It is.
Yes.
It's painstaking.
Yes.
Mostly from governments and from universities. But I've been doing this for 15 years. I have good contacts. And then I had Walter Willett from Harvard help with the meta-analysis.
Department of Nutrition, correct, at Harvard?
Yeah, I think, he used to be the dean of the School of Public Health. But a very sharp and rigorous guy. And so on average, people are eating 90 to 95% plant-based in blue zones. The 5 pillars of every longevity diet in the world are whole grains. This sort of shocks the anti-gluten crowd because you clearly see wheat in the Mediterranean blue zones, corn in the Latin American blue zones, and rice in the Asian blue zones. Greens of all kinds.
Sure.
The greens that we'd weed whack from our backyard. They're making beautiful salads and pies out of them. Tubers, potatoes, but especially sweet potatoes.
And the skins of sweet potatoes.
Yes, purple sweet potatoes in Okinawa, known as imo, which is about 60% of their dietary intake till about 1970. And then nuts of every kind. And then the cornerstone of every longevity diet in the world is beans. If you're eating about a cup of beans a day, it's probably worth about 4 extra years of life expectancy.
You can actually calculate extra years of life from beans.
It's done retrospectively. So they look at a big population and the population self-reports how many beans they eat per day, and you see that as little as 2 extra teaspoons of beans a day will show up in lowering mortality.
I love this. So beans for sure are greens. In fact, I saw a recipe. I went immediately to the Italian section. Since I'm Sicilian, I went to the Sardinian section, and I saw a recipe very simple for greens and onions. And that was it, a little bit of salt and pepper.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh gosh, I always try to do something more complex, either just a straight green salad or some sort of, sauteed spinach with a pesto with a something or other. But no, just onions and greens, so very simple. Of course, cut out meat, dairy, and try to keep it whole grain. So we were talking before about soy and corn and wheat in the American diet, but not as corn syrup, as actually whole grain corn, which is really a shout out to popcorn. Whole grain popcorn was my very favorite snack with extra virgin olive oil. Quick, because we're just going to have to go to break. But that's one thing I was surprised about. You didn't really talk so much about oils in the eating habits of these people. Do they eat them? They seem to.
Yes, so oil figures in fairly
frequently.
Yes, and we even found a correlation between higher olive oil consumption and lower mortality. In other words, people were eating a little bit more olive oil were living longer in Icaria, Greece. So I'm not sure if I completely buy this no oil argument. But by the way, here in America, we're an overfed population. In blue zones, they eat the right amount of food rather. So they're not, a little extra oil is not going to hurt them as much as it's going to hurt us.
Because we're already overindulgent and we're going overboard.
Correct.
Which sounds like us. That's basically how we roll in kind of all things. I've got Dan Buettner, founder of Blue Zones, with me, and the New York Times best-selling author. Yes, his newest book, Blue Zones Kitchens, is out. Blue Zone Kitchen. And I was going through some of the recipes myself. So many of them are easy, not complicated at all.
That's a thing you have to realize about people in blue zones. They're eating simply. This is not, they're not spending a lot of time in their kitchen. What struck me about collecting these recipes was that they're eating mostly peasant food. We have this mistaken idea in America that you have to be rich to eat healthy. You have to, go to expensive grocery stores and eat all organic. And it's not really the truth. The truth in certainly in blue zones. Beans and rice. They're not expensive, and greens you find out back it just isn't all that expensive. The idea here, none of these recipes, by the way, did I take out of somebody else's book. I actually went up into these villages in the back roads, and I sat on a stool with a laptop, and I watched these 80 or 90-year-old women cook these foods, and I captured. They don't use teaspoons or measuring cups, so I had to approximate, and then we sent it back to Los Angeles to a test kitchen to get it right.
Reverse engineering again.
There you go. I had the best photographer for National Geographic, David McLean, so the book is almost like a coffee table book. And the recipes are disappearing because the food tradition, which by the way is about 500 years old in these blue zones, is disappearing as the American food culture is just hitting these places like a tsunami. Yeah. So the book is really kind of a combination of science, beautiful photography, and 100 recipes to live to 100. Mm-hmm. And we approach it like a magazine article, not like a cookbook.
It doesn't feel like a cookbook, actually. You can see it here. I think it comes through from just the cover. It's very much a cocktail table book for me. It's a beautiful, because the photography is so gorgeous, really. That's what it comes down to. And then, it's so gorgeous. And then if you like to travel, obviously you do. You're an explorer. So some gorgeous pictures of, places to go, and some just gorgeous pictures of herbs, and really just a beautiful book all around. And then right up front, it has what we were talking about. So stick to whole foods, no meat, no dairy, get some nuts in there, make sure you're getting beans, keep your greens. So
this is a point of view. Now, in blue zones, they are eating some meat and dairy, but I chose not to include it in the book. So the book is 100% vegan. I figured people in their non-blue zones life, they're going to, succumb to the American diet. And I tried to make the Blue Zone Kitchen a really safe place to eat. So there's no cruelty, there's no animal products, and there's not one recipe in there that anybody would I think dispute as being a healthy recipe.
So what are some of the hurdles to implementing a blue zone diet? Like, obviously, we talked about the woman in Iowa who not only does she not have great food choices, the poor thing may be a single mother of three. She doesn't have a lot of time either. So, for her to reinvent the wheel or even spend time at the stove might be tricky for her. But beyond those basics that we know in the United States, what are some of the other hurdles that you found people have trouble maybe implementing this?
Well, I would say first and foremost is people's social network. Because you can try to make a move towards eating plant-based, and if all your friends are getting together and eating baby back ribs or hamburgers, it's very hard if you live in the, most of America to get away from it. I say if you want to make the move to a plant-based eating, you find half a dozen recipes. You got to try enough recipes until you find a half a dozen that you like. The most important ingredient in any longevity recipe is taste.
Yes.
I could tell you fermented tofu is the healthiest thing in this book, but if you don't like fermented tofu, you ain't going to eat it.
Yeah.
And then you have to build a social network around it. In Florida, Naples, I found 140, mostly women, who wanted to change the way they ate. We spent an evening with them. We introduced some of the recipes, the book to them, but then we clustered them up into groups of 5. And we challenged them to eat together for 3 months. Eat plant-based and eat together for 3 months. And of those 140 women, we added an extra 100 years of life expectancy in just 3 months.
Wow.
By getting them to make this move towards plant-based.
Well, you added how many years of life expectancy?
100, based on, we had them,
all of them together.
Of 140 people.
I see.
So they're immediately showing their cholesterol's dropping, their blood sugar's dropping, their weight's dropping. They're feeling better about themselves. They're feeling more energy. This comes from eating plant-based, but in order to do it, you need to find food you like, and you need to make a few friends who are also vegan or vegetarian.
I love this because, to me, this is such a testament of the human body. Sometimes we destroy it for decades, and it comes right back in 6 months, 3 months, a year. I mean, what you're saying to me is amazing, that you can really calculate that you can add lives like that. But I think it's also interesting what you're saying. This is how we started the radio show. Of course it's diet, but there are other things that make this start to be about more than just you. So you're talking about community and how sharing that community makes not only it easier because your friends are eating the same thing, but it brings some joy to the table.
It took me 20 years to tell you what I'm going to tell you right now. In blue zones, people don't have special diets. There's not any exercise program. The bottom line is they live in an environment where the healthy choice is the easy choice.
Oh, that's nice. Which is not the case for us. For us, it's much trickier.
Yes, we think that we're going to change our behavior to get healthier, and it occasionally works for some people, but it fails for almost all people all the time. And the only reason I wrote this Blue Zone Kitchen was to give people a runway. You notice that most people make healthy changes begin with their mouth and in their life. So I wanted to introduce the food, but really the bigger ethos of Blue Zones is you have to know your sense of purpose. You have to be surrounded by the right people, your immediate friends, curating your immediate social network. You need to have recipes that you enjoy, and it really helps to live in a place where it's easy to get fresh fruits and vegetables. So it has more to do with your surroundings than anything internally.
Yes, I love that you're saying that. And I think when I saw you speak the first time, you also said that people living in blue zones tended to move every day. They tended to do some sort of physical activity, and they tended to have a common faith. Is that right?
Well, they tended to belong to a faith. Most of them did. But this movement part, my team figured they moved every 20 minutes or so. So this isn't the type of people who go to the gym or run triathlons or do CrossFit. But they live in places where every time they go to work or to a friend's house or out to eat, it occasions a walk. They have gardens out back. Mm-hmm. They haven't engineered all physical activity out of their life with mechanical conveniences. They're still doing things by hand. This adds up. And it adds up in a much better way than sitting in your office or in your home all day long and thinking you're going to make it up in the gym. You keep moving all day long, you keep your metabolism higher, and you're going to burn way more calories.
Mm-hmm. Yes, makes sense, everybody, right? It certainly makes sense to me. Now, you've been trying to implement some of this stuff into new Blue Zone cities in the U.S., I think. Is that right?
We have 50 cities, including Fort Worth, Texas, and Orlando.
Wow.
Florida, and Naples, and the beach cities here in
Redondo
California.
and Hermosa.
That's right. And they've, from the top on down, the businesses, the city government, the restaurants, grocery stores, workplaces, they've really taken on a comprehensive approach to incrementally make their environment so the healthy choice is the easy choice. And in all of those cities, we've seen the obesity rate drop, we've seen diabetes drop, smoking rate drop, and they're saving, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, not by the delusion they're going to get everybody in their city to agree on the right diet and stay on it for years, but when they change their environment, just making this healthy food cheaper, more accessible, and in many cases, cooler.
Cooler, you mean it's the hip thing to do?
Yeah, so we offer Blue Zone certification for restaurants that offer plant-based, and they tend to be popular. So that, part of it, of course, is making things cool.
I like that. This radio show's cool. So
That's right.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Dan. Well, I wanted to get into a little bit of you personally before we go to break again. So these answers are meant to be super fast, super quick. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But you had mentioned purpose, and I wondered if you have a sense of purpose and what that might be.
Yes, my purpose, well, what I do best, my passion is finding traditional peoples of the world and distilling the lessons that they offer the rest of us.
It's wonderful because you get to do what you love, that travel and activity, and then you're researching and learning all the time. What do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now? You can change that to 15 or 20 if you prefer.
I wish I knew beans taste so good.
Really? Are beans like a discovery
I wasn't a big,
for you?
They have been over the past 10 years.
That's crazy talk. What's an expression that you live by? So you're traveling the world, your flight is late, everything's got debacled, and you're so frustrated. What do you tell yourself to bring yourself back up?
Well, I love that Charlie Brown exclamation when things don't go right. He says, "Rats." And somehow that's just kind of funny and also kind of vents at the same time.
Gets you back in the mood.
Rats.
Okay, rats. I like to say, and I think I can, this is radio. I may not be able to say the word. I don't really know, so I'll just intimate the word. I like to say rat bad. You figure out the rest, everybody. That makes me feel better. Okay, so we're talking about living to 100. What are your predictions for the future? And I'll leave it up to you if you want that to be 10 minutes from now or 2 decades from now.
I'm a pessimist. I spent all this time studying the collapses of civilization, and whether it's the Maya or the Anasazi, there's always a period of great prosperity right before everything goes to pot, so to speak. And
is that what we're up against?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
I know everybody else, all your other guests, I'm sure, are optimistic, but I think it's going to take a real correction before we snap out of it, actually. None of the trends are going the right direction. Obesity is going the wrong direction. Population continues to climb. I mean, there's some nice things happening on the fringe, but we continue to drive our cars, and
right.
Traffic increases all the time.
Clear our land.
Fish out the oceans.
Which are so sick.
There's hard lessons coming before I think there's a great correction.
I'll say that all my guests are positive except any guest who's an environmentalist. They all speak exactly as you do. We've got about a minute left, so these answers truly are the really fast ones. What are we always going to find in your fridge?
You're gonna soy milk.
Okay, soy milk. What is your favorite snack? Can be junky, can be good.
Peanuts.
Woo! And what is the one meal you can always make in 10 minutes at home? You've been traveling, you've been gone, you're exhausted, you walk through the door, 10 minutes, you make this thing, it's fabulous.
Breakfast is oatmeal.
Okay.
By the way, I cook this minestrone and I freeze it in glass containers. I throw it in the microwave, it's done.
Yeah, so I saw this minestrone recipe in here in the Sardinian section. It's all about the beans. It's so gorgeous and so good. What is your favorite Blue Zone's kitchen recipe?
The Ikarean longevity stew made with black-eyed peas, fennel, and tomatoes. It's amazing.
You heard it here on the Elysabeth Alfano Show. Keep it locked because there'll be more with Dan Buettner when we come back, and Leslie Durso and her vegan menu from the Four Seasons Santa Barbara. Dan Buettner here, founder of Blue Zones and the New York Times bestselling author of The Blue Zones Kitchen. But even more than Dan is we have Chef Leslie Durso in the house.
Much more.
Vegan chef extraordinaire. She has brought the vegan world to the Four Seasons Santa Barbara, and I love them for us. Leslie, tell me what we've got going here.
Sure. This is the vegan portobello panini sandwich with portobello and homemade cashew cheese, sun-dried tomato aioli,
Yum.
giant chunks of basil.
Wow.
Well, and sweet
Okay.
potato fries. You can never go wrong with sweet potato fries.
Okay,
right?
and then what's happening here?
This is the vegan cob. So this is baked marinated tofu. We've got some smoky mushrooms, grilled corn, tomatoes, avocado with a vegan ranch.
Oh my gosh. Stop yourself right now. And of course, it's a
Right.
vegan ranch. Yeah, hold this
course.
up, Dan. What's that?
That is my signature lasagna. So that is homemade pasta sheets layered with walnut bolognese, a homemade bechamel, and a tomato sauce.
Oh my.
I'm seeing an Italian theme emerge
Yes,
here.
Well, our restaurant Bella Vista is an Italian restaurant right on the beach. Oh, you're sacrificing
Oh my
truffle
God.
fries.
Help me. I want those
This is
back.
a,
Okay.
homemade burger patty with a truffle aioli and truffle fries.
Oh
Because
my
you can't
gosh.
get enough truffle ever, right?
Okay, and then Dan, hold that one up.
This is the udon noodle salad. It's a little sweet, it's a little spicy, and it's super yummy.
Oh my gosh.
And then
Okay.
no meal is complete without dessert.
Keeping
And
that
we've
one
got
close.
quite a few of them here. This is our gluten-free, vegan, decadent chocolate cake with chocolate fudge and cream cheese frostings and homemade maple ice cream.
Wow.
Because
Oh my
we
gosh.
make all of our ice creams here, so I decided that we would make our own vegan ice creams too.
So everything is in-house at the Four Seasons? You're making it all yourself?
Almost everything is in-house. We're not
Oh my
baking
gosh.
this bread, but I do love this bread. This is Prezzadilla. Do you know that company?
Yes, I do.
In
I love
LA?
Prezzadilla.
Oh, so good. So
Yes.
good.
Okay, so Dan, where should we start? What are you going for first?
I'm eyeing that burger.
Okay, hand it
We're
over.
in the burger.
Okay, yeah.
it's
Take
coming-
those fries.
it's
I've got
coming
the
to
sweet
you.
potato
Yeah,
fries.
and I love it. You can eat this with impunity, right? I mean, it's all
yeah.
plant-based and,
Yep.
and good for you.
Exactly.
I'm going portobello mushroom, but then I'm moving over to lasagna. This is fantastic.
Okay, good.
Okay, so Leslie,
I'll just talk while you guys eat.
that's the goal. Thank you. That's the goal. So tell me how you came to be the chef at the Four Seasons Santa Barbara.
Sure. Well, I mean, that goes back a little bit further. I became a chef 8 years ago, and I've just been working all over the place. And I did my first Four Seasons down in Punta Mita, Mexico, a couple years ago. And word spread. I've always loved Santa Barbara, San Diego native, and used to come up here all the time with my family. And so I just always really wanted to do this property and met with them, and here we are.
So what kind of resistance have you found being a vegan chef? Obviously, you know, we have things like Joaquin Phoenix's speech, which I read at the beginning of
So
the
beautiful.
Yes, the beginning
So
of the
beautiful.
show. Yeah, so obviously things are changing, but you've been a vegan chef for a while now. This is not a new hot trend for you. This is your life.
No, I also stopped eating meat when I was 7, so
So this is literally your life.
I'm so excited the world is catching up.
And you're clearly going to live to 100. So
I hope so. I hope so. We'll see.
But what
Doing
kind
everything right.
What kind of resistance have you found to having a vegan chef? To restaurants accepting a vegan chef?
Yeah, restaurants have been very accepting. Well, look, I mean, so I create full dietary restriction programs too, I should say. It's beyond just creating vegan food. So gluten-free, nut-free, soy-free, dairy-free, not always at the same time. But it's a little bit of everything so that anyone with any dietary restriction can sit and eat at a table together. That's my main mission. But
Yeah, but this is not restrictive. There is nothing restrictive about this food.
Exactly, and that's what I want to prove to people is that anybody can enjoy this food. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be a vegan to enjoy vegan food.
Gosh,
you eat vegan
true.
food all the time, and you don't even think about it.
Yes.
It's
Guacamole, hummus. Yeah. Rice and beans.
spaghetti.
Yes.
peanut
Yeah,
butter and
instead of
jelly.
eating the meat equivalent of this food and wanting to go home and take a nap, you have energy after.
Yeah, exactly. All of this is designed to give you a lot of energy. It's all very nutrient dense foods, which is a big thing for me when I'm cooking. Is I'm always looking to put as many nutrients in something as I can. Aside from chocolate cake, we did put some raspberries on the plate just to spruce it up and give you a little bit of health.
So how does it work? Do you go to the Four Seasons and say, okay, this is the vegan menu that I'd like to propose? Or do they come to you and say, actually our clients have been saying that they want a healthier version and we also want to share with the world the concern for the environment, so we'd like to move in this direction? Or is it a
It's usually
collaboration?
a little bit of both, and it's a collaboration because obviously I am not the only chef at any of the Four Seasons. They have an executive chef who's responsible for all of the menus across the board. Our chef here, Michael Patria, is one of my favorite chefs I've ever worked with. And so we really came to this together as a collaboration, as what his vision was and how I could plug in recipes that worked with his vision and what he was already doing. And so everything seamlessly integrated into the menus, so it didn't look like it was fighting each other.
Wonderful. Yes, I understand. You wanted the brand to move forward cohesively. Still.
Yeah, of
Yes.
course.
Of course, as any good chef would want. Dan, I'm curious because, of course, most of the people from the Blue Zones, they don't head out to restaurants. Most of them are cooking right in their own kitchen. So I'm curious how you recommend to people, let's say in the American Blue Zone cities that you're trying to implement. Is there a ratio of like cooking at home to eating out?
Every time you go out, in general, you're consuming about 200 or 300 more calories. It's not necessarily vegan eating, but in general, than you would if you just ate at home. So, as a rule in Blue Zones, we do promote stay at home, cook with your family, cook with your kids, eat at home. You can control the ingredients, and you know you're cooking exactly what you like. I mean, obviously. Coming to a place like this is a big exception.
Huge treat. Yes,
I like
absolutely.
to think so.
Yes, absolutely. So, do you think that this is something that the Four Seasons might carry out across the properties across the United States, or?
Well, I would love to see that happen. Four Seasons, if you're watching, let's talk. But right now, I work with each one individually, and so there are more lined up for the future. But right now, Santa Barbara is my California home.
Oh, it's wonderful. But of course, you don't only cook for the Four Seasons in Santa Barbara. You also have the Four Seasons in Punta Mita.
Punta Mita, Mexico.
Which is where exactly?
You fly into Puerto Vallarta, and it's about a 40-minute drive, a beautiful drive from there.
Where is it in relation to Sayulita?
It's right by Sayulita. It's about 20 minutes.
Such a beautiful beach.
Gorgeous area.
Lovely area.
The Four Seasons has this huge, they actually have 2 private beaches that are just spectacular. You haven't been down there yet. You and Kathy need to get down there.
I've been down there actually, yes, but not in Puerto Vallarta. Independent, just
yeah.
Yes.
You gotta come to the Four Seasons.
I'm
paradise.
I'm in.
Is that right? Oh, is it only vegan at Punta Mita? No.
No, it's not all vegan, but we have over 100 vegan options at that hotel.
Punta Mita, Mexico.
Yeah.
And why
Yeah.
there? Is it because Mexican food just naturally lends itself already with rice and beans? And
Well, it does
guacamole?
lend itself, but we also have an Asian restaurant and an American Grill restaurant, and a bunch of pools and cafes and so many dining options there. But it's really that most of the people that are coming to that location are coming from Los Angeles, and they're demanding a healthier options. And so the menu has been tremendously successful there. And it's been a lot of fun. I get to go back down in 2 weeks. So excited.
I love to hear that things are not just, it's a Brooklyn thing or it's a Los Angeles thing, but actually there is demand in other cities and other places.
Around the world.
Around the world, that's
Yeah.
right. Israel, of course, is a large vegan
Germany,
hub,
huge.
And the UK couldn't be
And
any
it's
larger.
growing.
And it's growing.
I actually know the guy who runs the vegan studies program here at Santa Barbara, who told me that 15% of students at UCSB are vegetarian or vegan, and that's the direction the world's going. It was 3% when we were kids. So
Well, you actually had me at Vegan Studies. There's a Vegan Studies program?
yeah,
Yes.
What does that mean?
that he teaches the ethics and the history and the science of veganism. Right?
What is this man's name?
Do you remember
Renan?
Renan, yes, yeah.
Renan, come on my show. Renan has to be on my show.
We're Facebook friends, so maybe he's watching.
Okay, well, watch, please, and come on my show. I would love to come back to the Four Seasons Santa Barbara and interview you, and we can have lunch and do this all over again. So that's amazing that exists.
I know,
It's
isn't
so
it incredible?
inspirational. Yes. Well, it's funny because right before you sat down with all this great food, Leslie, Dan and I were talking about the future, and Dan was not so optimistic. But the fact that there's a vegan studies program.
Yeah, I mean the immediate future of eating plant-based, I think, looks good. I was just talking about the earth.
Yes.
and the world as we know it. I
Do
do
you
love.
think we've reached our tipping point? Or have we gone too far?
I
There's
don't
no
think we're
coming
headed in
back.
a good direction, actually. But I'm a pessimist. I'm a disruptor. Everybody else paints the rosy picture.
Well, Leslie, what do you think? Do you have any predictions for the future? I do love to ask these questions.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball or anything, but I am very excited about the amount of at least efforts that are being made by major corporations right now to create more wellness within their corporations, whether that's offering plant-based dining at their establishments or creating community within companies and people taking time out to you know, they're like, look at Google. I mean, Google's got like
Yes.
yoga rooms and meditation rooms and like all sorts of things for their employees to do. So I think that people are starting to wake up and become a little bit more mindful. I don't know if it's fast enough, but it makes me happy.
This food in front of me, honest to God, gives me optimism. You know, when it comes, I run these big city programs, and it's very hard to convince people to change the way they eat based on the environment. They kind of care about it. Animal cruelty, they should care about it, but most people really don't care about it. But when it comes to taste, that's how you get the converts. So it isn't until people see a lasagna like this, or a burger like this, or a beautiful Asian salad like that, and dig into it when they say, aha, I can eat this way. And then I think the ethics and the health come behind the taste.
100% agree with you. I think that there's so many people that say, I would like to go vegan, but I don't know how. And so if I can provide food for people to go out and eat at and to go on vacation and enjoy, I'm solving their problem. So now they don't have that excuse anymore.
So you know it's been a successful show when Dan starts out pessimistic and he ends on an optimistic note.
I'm a convert.
I love it. Everybody has their marching orders. They're going to go get the Blue Zones Kitchen book. And if you're super lucky, maybe Dan will even sign it. You can figure that out. Of course, come to the Four Seasons Santa Barbara. Try Leslie Durso's vegan menu. It is outstanding. And the Four Seasons here in Santa Barbara truly is a home away from home. It is just absolutely beautiful here. If you've been at all inspired by this, I am throwing a class, Jumpstart Your Plant-Based Life. If you want to get into this kind of lifestyle, hit me up and find that class. It's actually on my website. It's the Elysabeth Alfano Show, the only plant-based radio show in the nation. Together we are taking back our health and the health of the planet. See you next Sunday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.